Hey, what's up guys? So in this video I'm going to show you how I made this height chart for my son Ollie. We've needed one in the house for a while. We've had one of those horrible paper ones, but we wanted something that's a little bit more nicer, something that we can keep for a while, and you know, if we have any more kids we can add them onto it at the end. And obviously I wanted to make it, I didn't want to just buy something, so this one's quite nice. It will fit in the gap that we've got between a couple of doors and it should look quite nice in the end, so keep tuned and I'll show you how I made it. So I started by ripping down the timber to the width I needed. It had to be just under 3.5 inches, so I only had to take a small slither off. The ones I sell are a lot wider than this, but because this is for me, it's specific to our gap. I didn't want it to protrude past the existing door frame, I wanted it to sit flush. So I put it through the thicknesser several times to get it just right. I got to admit, this is still one of my favourite machines in the entire shop. I started by marking out every 10 centimetres, starting at 20. I personally didn't want a gap between the skirting board, so I kept the length and added a few markings below just to fill it out. I was originally going to make the centre of the mark the true measurement, but I changed my mind and made the bottom of it instead. I felt this would make it clearer where the actual measurement was. I made each 10 centimetre marking 7 centimetres long. I then did my first ever burn-in. It was more difficult than I thought it was going to be. I think I tried every single tip in the box and I still couldn't find anything that I was overly happy with. I eventually settled for the straight edge coming to the points on both sides. I couldn't do it freehand, so I thought I'd use the straight edge of the template that came with it in order to mark one side and then come back and do the other side. I then came through to mark the 1 centimetre intervals. Originally I was going to mark them all the same size, but I thought it might actually be a bit too much. So I decided to mark the 5 centimetre line at 5 centimetres and the rest I kept at 3, just to keep it tidy. And then we come back to burning. This isn't something that I'm overly a big fan of at this point, but you've got to, straight lines are actually even harder, I personally felt, because you had to try and keep them nice and thin in order to keep the marking. But I did end up using a ruler, but it was still hard and I powered through. My wrist hated me at the end of this, but once I added the grip to the burner it was actually a lot more easier and I found it a lot more relaxing, especially doing the numbers. The numbers were easy with that template. I was so happy that I got the template free with it. I first started with all the zeros and worked my way up from there. I made sure they were all in line, so hopefully by the end of it they would all look in line with each other and symmetrical. So I got rid of any remaining pencil marks that I'd left, and then went on to a small bit of fine sanding. I needed to remove some of the leftover residue from where I was actually burning it in, and it stuck to the bottom of the template. So when there was a 7, there was actually a 6 there as well, just from leftover stickiness. My wife wasn't a massive fan of having the small breaks in the numbers, so what I had to do is I had to go back through every single number that had a break, so all the 0s, 4s, 6s, etc, in order to make sure they filled out properly. And I do actually have to say, it does look better than it did before, so I'm happy that she said it. My branding eye decided to fail, so I had to use the cooker in order to burn in my maker's mark, but it still looks okay. And then I drilled my holes. I only needed 3, as it isn't heavy, and I didn't want to ruin the look of the chart by having loads of drill holes all the way through. I finished it with just a bit of Osmo Poly X, just to give it a bit of protection and a bit of hard wearing coating for it. My son was gracious enough to let me have some of his balls in order for me to raise the board up so I could do the sides. I wasn't going to bother protecting the back, as it's never going to get seen. And then it was time to fit it. The 3 screws actually did look quite nice. It didn't take away from the look of the actual chart, and they weren't glaringly obvious because I used brass ones as well. Fits in the gap quite nicely as well. So there you go, that's how I did it. It's a fairly simple build. It took me a long time just because I've got quite a lot of other projects at the moment, but it turned out really well. The burning was difficult, but I'm glad that I managed to get through it. In my future ones I will probably try and route it out instead, as long as I can find a nice small router bit for it. But I still think it looks quite good and it is fit for purpose for what I needed. We've got quite a small space, like I said, so this will fit in that gut nicely, and hopefully it's something that we can keep for a very, very long time. but I'll be trying to sell these at some point, so I'll add them to my pages, so you can, if you want one, you can buy one, and yeah, should be good. So I'll see you next time. Like and subscribe underneath, and hit that bell icon if you want to be notified when I load my new videos, and I'll see you in the comments.